Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I'm going to be talking about a show which has its core hook in its title, the 2023 action thriller series Who is Erin Carter? And the first episode begins with Erin Carter smuggling her daughter Harper out of the United Kingdom. 5 years later, Erin is living in Barcelona with her new husband Geordie and working as a supply teacher at the English language school that the now 10-year-old Harper attends. Erin's life seems pretty settled. Sure, there's that one snobby neighbour who doesn't like her, and Harper has an eye condition that requires her to wear special glasses, but that's all just regular life stuff. Whatever drove her to flee the UK seems to be safely in her past. But appearances, of course, are deceiving. It wouldn't make for much of a show otherwise, would it? And Erin and Harper's apparently innocuous trip to the local supermarket proves the catalyst for things beginning to unravel. While they are there, armed robbers wearing masks storm into the place. Erin's first thought, of course, is how to protect Harper. No doubt that's what most mothers would prioritise. Most mothers, however, would probably not be able to subdue an armed robber in brutal hand-to-hand combat, nor would those mothers be recognised by the robbers, both of whom react like they've seen a ghost. Finally, most mothers would probably also not suffocate the robber who ends up in hospital in what appears to be an attempt to stop him from talking to the police. So just who is Erin Carter? Where did she learn her fighting skills? How did those criminals know her? And what does all this have to do with the strange visions Harper is now having of a humanoid figure with an antlered deer-like head? Who is Erin Carter is a British series, features a cast of largely British performers, though the title role actually went to a Swedish actor, Evan Ahmed, who prior to this show was best known for her work in Danish and Swedish programming. I've got no complaint with Ahmed's casting though. She's solid in the leading role, both in terms of believably being British and as a believable action star, which is a direction her career seems to be moving, as she's apparently now part of the Den of Thieves series of films. The real standout performance, though, in my eyes, is probably that of young actor Indica Watson, who plays Harper. Already an experienced performer, Watson, who was 13 at the time this was made, is likely someone you'll hear of in the future if she decides to continue performing. Who is Erin Carter was produced for Netflix. It received decent but not exceptional reviews from critics. One particularly negative review said, Who is Erin Carter? Who cares? Probably more important to Netflix, though, it proved successful with audiences and spent several weeks in their global top 10. So what do I think? Well, personally, I think the show is a bit of a mixed bag. For instance, while I've praised Ahmad and Watson's performances, I don't think all of the supporting actors are of quite the same standard. And the show does have its share of other strengths and weaknesses, so let's dig into them. So one aspect of the show that I enjoyed was the thematic focus on chosen or found family, the bonds of loyalty and affection that comes from something other than romantic love or blood relationship. These include, but are certainly not limited to, the relationship between Erin's new husband Geordie and Erin's daughter Harper. There's a genuine sense of affection and care between these two characters. That affection and care isn't expressed in the same way by each of them, of course. A 10-year-old girl and a grown man aren't going to act in the same manner as each other, but there's no doubt that Harper and Geordie do care about each other as father and daughter, despite there being absolutely no blood relationship between them. And that's only one example of the chosen family theme. There are others, such as the loyalty between Geordie and his best friend Emilio, or between Emilio and Erin. Of course, the flip side of having a chosen family is the consequences when someone you believe to be part of that family betrays you. And that, perhaps inevitably, is also part of the themes that this show features. Now, some people love chosen family films. I like them myself. Some people don't care much about them one way or the other, and there are perhaps even some who dislike the theme or find it tiresome. So this element of the show may or may not be a positive for you, but it's definitely a notable factor. Another element of note, and one which I think is more likely to be a near universal positive, is the show's action choreography. The fight scenes in Who is Erin Carter are well designed and structured. They're intense, scrappy, and fierce. Erin and her opponents seem to be holding nothing back in their efforts to win a fight. They make use of any nearby item that can be utilised as a weapon. They have no qualms about resorting to dirty tactics. They target their opponent's joints and head and so forth. There's a genuine sense that their focus is on winning the fight, rather than merely performing a bunch of impressive stunts and acrobatics. Which isn't to say that there isn't any impressive stunt work, because there is, actually quite a lot of it, but it's very much focused on being functional utilitarian. For instance, when people get smashed through or into a table, the way the show presents this is as a deliberate tactic to inflict more damage on the target, not simply because it looks cool to have bits of furniture fly all over the place. The people who planned and executed the fight scenes in this show really deserve for their work to be recognised and rewarded, because I think they've done a great job. Something I found less good, alas, was the story that these fun action sequences were serving. The key problem in my eyes is that having set up interesting questions, the show delivers quite uninspiring answers. Why do these criminals recognize Erin? Why and how did she learn to be such a good fighter? Why is Harper seeing this strange deer-headed figure? In every case, I found the answer less interesting than the question. They weren't bad answers exactly. Well, I mean, except for the deer-headed figure one, that's pretty naff. But there were never any answers that and there were never any answers that made things retrospectively make no sense, which is important, right? Everything was consistent and coherent. Perhaps too consistent and coherent. The show's revelations are too grounded, too prosaic, too neatly tailored to fit. There's an old concept that it's the little imperfections that bring real clarity and beauty. Consider Cindy Crawford's famous mole, a unique feature that made her one of the most successful and famous models of the 80s and 90s. Everything in this show, on the other hand, dovetails really nicely, but everything is also a little bit too convenient and neat. It lacks a spark of element or surprise. Imagine a house where the walls, the doors, and the floor were all exactly the same colour. You couldn't complain that it didn't all tie together, but it'd be very dull to look at. You need something that breaks it up and creates a moment of excitement. And while Who is Erin Carter has plenty of excitement in its action, I think it lacks a little in its story. So I don't regret watching the show, but it didn't quite reach the heights that I think it could have done if it had been a bit more narratively bold. Next time, it's Friday the 13th next week, and in honour of that, I'll be taking a look at the second, third, and fourth entries in the long-running horror franchise of the same name. But that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've seen Who is Erin Carter, let me know what you thought of it.